perfect. Okay, yes, I'm in the enviable position of being between you and cocktails, so I'll try to keep it as quick as I am a principal consultant with the Table Group. If you've heard of Patrick Lencioni, he's written 10 best-selling books, DYSFUNCTIONS. I'm also a corporate psychologist for about 20 plus years now. And it's funny because when I would mention that even just 2 years ago, people go, what the heck is that? And now, because of Billions, a TV show that everyone knows what a corporate psychologist is, it's a little different than what they show. Today, I'm going to be talking about the connection between vulnerability and leadership. And when a lot of business people hear this, they go, that does not work. In fact, I'll start with a story of a client of mine. A very significant company here in California, working with their leadership team. The way we work is we work with our teams at the leadership team level, and then we cascade our organizational health into that company. So I'm working with the team, 2-day offsite, and within just the first hour of this offsite, I'm talking about vulnerability-based trust. And the CFO sticks up his hand and he goes, that's BS. I don't know one CEO in the entire world worth their salt that would think being vulnerable was a good thing on a leadership team. And so we had a very spirited discussion around that. But it was very fascinating. The end of the story is this. Basically what he thought was, and everyone in the room, by the way, because everyone in the room was shaking their heads too. They were very hard-driving, deal-making people, and all they cared about was performance and profit. That was it. And it showed. And by the end of the day, what happened was I talked to that same CFO, and I confided in him. I go, man, this is the hardest I've ever worked with any team in my career. I'm exhausted. And to his credit, he said, if you think you're exhausted, how do you think we feel? We are talented here. And the CEO was just, that CEO was a little off. And
aren't they all?
But he drove these people really hard. And so the CFO said, if everyone in this room doesn't sleep, stressed out, and always thinking they're going to be out the door. And they said, no one on this team would admit to that. So the end of the story is, you can imagine where this is headed. The end of the story is that company 6 months later, because I stopped working, they don't want to work anymore. So 6 months later, they were caught in doing illegal deals, very public, the stock price dropped 30% in a week, and the CEO was out the door. And to their credit, the CFO, who I thought was the healthiest person on that team, took over the company in trouble. And so it's a great segue into what I want to talk about today. Right side, sorry. Here we go. Okay. So, good place to start is what is vulnerability-based trust? Because this is at the foundation of everything about organizational health. First thing, this is my own definition. It's the ability to call out reality and to seek help from others to deal with it. This is the one thing I do as a psychologist. I don't bring in theories and that kind of thing as a psychologist. I bring in clarity around reality. That's my number one thing. If I can do that, I've done a good job. But most people don't want to face reality. I don't want to face reality. In my marriage, with my kids, in my business, you name it. We all struggle with this, but we need to be able to humble ourselves and put ourselves under other people to protect us from that capacity to avoid reality. The second thing is this vulnerability-based trust is the only way to become professionally mature. How else are you going to become mature if you don't know what you don't know about yourself? And to be vulnerable and say, hey guys, I don't know what's going on here. I screwed up. I don't know what direction to head. All these type of things that when you're vulnerable with your leadership team, it will allow you to mature professionally and for them as well. But we want to wear this mask. I call it the Mask of Competency. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. It's a mask of leadership. It's a mask of all sorts of things. Masking is not the way to go. It gets you in trouble every time because that mask either gets stuck on and people count on it, and it's not, there's nothing behind it, or it falls off some point and you really fail. Finally, this type of trust deepens the trust within your team. It's the only way I think that you build trust on your team. Now, there's some like a foundational groundwork before we go on. The table group believes that there are two characteristics to all successful organizations. One side is being the smart side. A lot of the presentations today are smart side issues. Technology, marketing, finance, sales, that kind of thing. But you need both sides. A lot of people teach this, a lot of people consult to this side. What they don't consult to is the healthy side. It's really messy. That side, you can tweak the dials and do all sorts of metrics and that kind of thing. But the healthy side is very difficult because who teaches it, number one. It takes a lot of courage. And it's just we're often not learning to do it. Again, I'll fess up. Some of this stuff I don't do. You know, I wish I did, but boy, I get caught up in it and I got to remind myself. So the healthy side, the beautiful thing about this is this: you need both sides. And the healthy side will, the healthier you are, the more smart you will be. And the less healthy you are, the dumber you're going to be and your team. Okay, now I love this. This is I mentioned the 5 dysfunctions of a team. I'm going to quickly just go through this. It's a beautiful model that starts with this vulnerability-based trust model. And on a dysfunctional team, you have an absence of that trust. Everything above it doesn't work if that's the case. If you don't have trust, you're not going to have good conflict. You're not going to have commitment to the decisions you make. You're not going to be holding each other accountable because it's going to be too painful. And finally, you're not going to have shared results. Because all these things build on one another. If you got a problem here, you go down. You got a problem here, you go down. Now, how do you build trust? First thing is, as leaders, you set the tone for the vulnerability on your team, the honesty of it, the trust that you instill in your team. To the degree that you do it is the degree that your team will do it, and then thus the whole company. Southwest Airlines is one of our favorite clients, and they are great at this. We've learned as much from them as they have from us, and that's a really healthy organization. You might not, prefer to fly their airline, but they do a great job organization. So vulnerability begets vulnerability. If you're vulnerable, if you just know this in your personal lives, okay, when you're vulnerable with your kids, with your spouse, with your friends, we're hardwired to be vulnerable back. So it really does start with the leader. Second thing, there's a huge difference between transparency and vulnerability. People use them interchangeably. I really disagree with that. Transparency means this: that it's a one-way communication of some truth, some form of reality, either about you, your weakness, your strength, your financials, you name it. It's just one way. Vulnerability is a two-way. It's always a two-way street, meaning you're asking for something. You're asking that other person, okay, here's the truth about me or the company or the situation, and I'm asking for your help or your forgiveness or whatever it is. I had a CFO, these are all CFO stories, which I find fascinating. A CFO for a very prominent international food company. And we're meeting with the leadership team, and we're doing this vulnerability exercise. And he said, okay, I'll be vulnerable, which in fact he was being transparent. He said, I hate authority and I can't stand being told what to do. And he shares this with the leadership team. And everyone's just like going, okay, and what are we supposed, is that a threat? What is this? What are you telling us here? And he never followed it up. He also shared that he drives in a dining room for the last 10 years because he makes $300 an hour, so what's to him if he gets a ticket? So everyone on the team is just going, who is this guy? 16 years old or something? And so the problem is this: he was being transparent and not vulnerable. If he was truly vulnerable, he would have said, and guys, this is going to hurt me if it already hasn't. It's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt our customers. Somewhere down the road, this is not a good way to be. And he never did that. He thought, it was almost like, deal with it, guys. This is me. Finally, nothing better in life than being known. If you think of the people in your life that know you, warts and all, I got some people like that. I got a guy in the back of the room there. That really know the worst about you and still care for you and are still with you and still want to protect you in those areas. On a team, people will go through a wall for you if they sense that from you as a leader. And that's, again, this is all about, you gotta be vulnerable first, you gotta set the tone for this. Okay, I mentioned masks. There's all sorts of masks we all wear. In our marriages, in our personal relationships, we wear this mask of, hey, everything's fine, but inside you're just wanting to kill a person. Or whatever it is. And it always leads to bad things. And again, I mentioned when you wear a mask in a personal relationship, it's the mask that gets loved, not really who you are. So you're always wondering, do you really love me for who I really am, who you don't know, and I'm not going to share it with you? And so it's critical on a team for the same reason. If people are counting on you to be competent, and you know you're not competent in certain areas, you're just wearing a mask that's going to either stick too hard, and that's going to hurt you, or it's going to fall off one day, and that's really going to hurt you. But the worst thing is it just creates false trust in everyone. It stunts your professional maturity and theirs. Kills the team's trust, because they know. You think you're faking, you think you're fooling everyone? No. All of us know when someone's fooling you. And you just know it. You just get this vibe of, queasy around that person. I don't trust them. And finally, it stunts your professional influence as well. Every leader, all you have is influence. This is what we're about. To lead is to influence people. And if you're not, if you're wearing that mask and people are sniffing that out, you're not influencing them. Okay. How do we, so as we're going up the pyramid here, what happens if you don't have trust? If you don't have trust and you have conflict, what happens? Politics. How many of you have been in situations on teams, in organizations, where it's just filled with politics? You'd have meetings, everyone's shaking their head, yeah, we're on board, boss, and they go out that meeting room, and they pull each other aside and go, Joe, can you believe what Jane wants to do? And this is horrible, we got to band together, what do we do here? Second thing, a critical component of mastering conflict is there's a wisdom to the team. There's a wisdom that no one person can have. And so we really encourage people, be vulnerable. When you have a problem with a decision, speak up. It's amazing on teams that I'll have junior members of a team who never say a word, and they will pipe up because I have a process that everyone has to speak in this process. And they will say something, and they would never have said it before. And the whole team just goes, whoops. That is a really good point. But they would never have spoken up before because they weren't intentional about pulling out that conflict from their team members. And again, I mentioned being understood is critical. If you, in conflict or in a debate, are understood for what you think about that issue, and it still goes against you, you're going to be much more likely to do the next thing, which is commit to it. But if you don't feel heard and understood around those issues of why you don't think we should go in one direction or why you should go in that direction, you will commit to it if you feel understood by the team. Accountability is the hardest thing. We do a team assessment report for all the teams we work with. This is always the lowest scoring item. Even at the table group, it's the lowest scoring item. Accountability is really, really difficult. And again, without trust, you're not going to have it. And so all accountability means is keeping your promises to each other, keeping the decisions you made, and it's as simple as that. What most people think about accountability, though, it's kind of like a thing like this, where you're coming down on someone, and nobody wants to do that. I like to view it this way, that accountability is arm around the shoulder, protecting each other. And when leaders hear that it's protecting versus coming down on someone, it turns the table a lot on being able to hold someone down. Again, affirm and protect. meaning protect each other, their weaknesses, and affirm each other in their strengths. And then finally, there's a big difference between human error and just being human and being incompetent. Okay, so if you have people on your team that keep screwing up, you got to do something about that. You got to hold them accountable. They're not a good fit, and they're a good fit somewhere else. Their highest and best use is somewhere else out there in the organization, or maybe away from the organization. But if they keep proving themselves to just be incompetent, that's a whole different story. Okay, and then finally, results. The critical thing here in our model is that it's not a golf team. A golf team is you go out there on the links and you play around and you have no clue on how everyone else is doing. I was on a tennis team, same thing in high school. And when you guys are operating like a basketball team or a football team, where everyone is relying on each other, people are having each other's backs. When someone breaks down, someone steps in. Everyone knows what the score is at every moment of that game. But on a golf or tennis team, you don't. And so many organizations are siloed. Marketing is killing it, sales isn't. There's a big argument between the two. Nobody has each other's backs. Finally, what are the questions that you can ask that will allow you to get vulnerable very quickly? I love this first question. I do this with my kids. I have done this with my kids. I've definitely done it with my wife and people that I work with. How do I affect you? It's a really humble question to ask, and people respond really well to it. Another way of saying it is, how do you experience it? It's a great question to ask. Another question, what's my highest and best use? I have an exercise that I work with teams, and I ask everyone on the team, Ted, so it's Ted's team here. Ted, what is Ted's highest and best use? What is Ted awesome at? What can he nail every time? What should Ted stop doing? Okay, because you suck at it or it drains you, or guess what? You might be great at it, Ted, but this is not your highest and best use. It's a real estate term. You don't put a skyscraper on Balboa Island, right? You put it up on Fashion Island, and you put beach houses on Balboa Island. Same thing with people. Even though you might really be good at something, like a lot of founders, they're good at sales or whatever, they get caught up in the minutia of the business. That's not their role as CEO. That's role of VP of sales or whatever. Not this. And then finally, what is hurting my influence? Ask people. There's a team member that I just worked with last week. She was opinionated and really abrasive. Really abrasive. I mean, I even like, whoa. And instead of saying, wow, cool it, you're really being, you're really being obnoxious, all these things that kind of create shame in people. Instead, I said, make up her name, Jane. Do you know you hurt your influence with this team and with everyone else when you behave that way? And she goes, you are exactly right. I've always known it. I don't know what to do about it. So that was a really beautiful moment of vulnerability for her in front of the team. And it sounds trite, but from that day, she totally changed. Now every now and then it pops up, but she's really super sensitized to it. And that really helped her in her career because she was actually about 2 feet out the door with the CEO because of it. Okay, I'm going to end on this. This is it. At the absolute foundation of healthy and effective relationships is the ability to be vulnerable in all our relationships, especially with your kids, parents here, or grandkids, or some of us. Dropping that mask of whatever it is. I'm saying competency here for the leaders here, but it's critical to be people, your maturity, their maturity, and your influence. So thank you for your time, and I wish the best for your companies.